Okay, so we're here to talk about OneDrive. So let me just explain at a high level what OneDrive is. So OneDrive is a cloud storage solution similar to Dropbox or iCloud or any of those types of systems. The difference here is that it's sponsored and owned and managed by TopperX in our Office 365 infrastructure. So it's secured, it's our preferred method of any storage systems. The other thing, OneDrive does a number of other things that are beneficial. One of which is you can collaborate and communicate on documents, and it has some cool tools with that work just within OneDrive, and then it also complements SharePoint and even Teams. So we've struggled to roll out OneDrive just because it's been a complicated product to follow because it's kind of changed over the last 2 or 3 years. Also, there's some underpinning infrastructure challenges in our environment of how the original Office 365 was set up. But I think we as a team talked that we're kind of at a place where we're going to try to sort of walk into OneDrive. And we thought the best group to start with is the management team. And so I promised to do a presentation. And I've been using OneDrive, and I live and die in OneDrive. And so some people have seen that and said, well, how do I do that? And so I thought I would put together a quick presentation with the team's help. And if you get something from this, it's not necessarily important that you can go replicate it, but it'll at least give you an idea of what you can do. And then you can open up a ticket, maybe not right now with everything going on, but in a week or two or whenever dust starts to settle, and have someone from the IT team help you out with sort of getting into it for the first time. We also put together a document on how to set it up and configure it and install it and use it for the first time, so we may distribute that strategically to folks. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this screen, and I'm going to switch to a virtual computer that I have set up, and hopefully this will work out for you to follow along. I have a co-presenter, Michael, that is going to work with me when we get to that point, and we'll be able to demonstrate a couple things in a shared setting. And right now, under the current circumstances, this may be a tool that you all will want to use, even if just to share and collaborate on documents a little more effectively. So everybody should be seeing a desktop here. This is actually a VDI desktop, just like our salespeople have. It's just one that I have set up for testing and other purposes. And this desktop's been set up with Office 365, and I have already installed OneDrive on this computer. And in order for you to take advantage of it, it's not installed by default, so you'll have to install it. So we'll have to send you the instructions or open a ticket, and someone will help you do that at an appropriate time. So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about one of the other big benefits of OneDrive is that my files are in the cloud. My documents are in the cloud. They're in a secured folder that TopperX has ownership and control over. And I can access that in the cloud on any web browser. So if I'm at grandma's house and I need to get into a document real quick and send it to Scott Franklin, I can go into Office 365, open up Word in the online version, find that document in my OneDrive, edit it, send an email through the Outlook, and I never even had to have my computer. I could do it from any computer anywhere with my credentials and the ability to get into the cloud Office 365. Additionally, you can install Office 365 and OneDrive on your mobile phone, for example, or a tablet, for an example. And you can do the same thing now where you can get access to that through secured connections and using your credentials, and you can access that document and do what you need to do with it, send emails, those types of things. And you might ask yourself, well, I don't know that I'll ever do that. All I can say is there have come so many times where I got an email or somebody called me about something, and I was working on that document a few days ago, and within a few clicks on my cell phone, I was able to pull it up and get whatever information I needed to share, and that has been invaluable to me. So let's get into it. What we're going to do first is show you a little bit about what happens when OneDrive's installed. So when OneDrive's installed and it's configured properly, it'll take over my documents and pictures folders, so I'll no longer see those on the screen. But all of my documents are here in this thing called OneDrive now, and you'll see these green checks, and what that means is they're synchronized in the cloud. I not only have a copy of these on my computer, but I also have them in the cloud, which is a nice backup, but also allows me that if this was a laptop and I had it disconnected from the network, I can still access my files. I can still edit them. When my computer gets back on the internet, it'll connect to my cloud, it'll synchronize, and it makes life a little bit easier and certainly more secure because my documents are backed up if something happens to my laptop or physical PC. So what we're going to do first is I'm just going to create a simple Word document. So I'm going to open Office 365 like you would any other day. And this is just a test document. And I'm going to list on this test things that we got to get done with Michael before I get started. So Michael and I need to do a one-on-one. We need to talk about checkpoint install. And then I'm going to go ahead and save this document to my OneDrive folder, which is a prerequisite of me being able to collaborate on it. And you'll notice up here in the top, and I don't know how well you guys can see this on my screen. I'll go ahead and try to annotate to it. But up here in this area in the top, it says auto save off, and I see a little disk icon, kind of dated. All of us old people will know what that disk is. All of the young kids won't understand what it is. But as you can see, that's down here in that, or up in the autosave area. So what I have to do for the first time is save this document. So I'm going to go ahead and click the save, and it's going to ask me if I want to save it to OneDrive, and I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm going to give this a different name because I already have a test name out there. Sorry about that. Test document 3, because Michael and I did a little practice session earlier today. So so now I want to collaborate with Michael on this document. So I'm going to go ahead and send it to him. And I'm going to do this kind of the old-fashioned way, which is I'm going to launch Outlook. And I'm going to say new email. And I'm going to send this to Michael. And hey, our list. Let's work on this list if you don't mind. And I'm going to attach that file now. And you'll notice something here where I have this little cloud at the bottom of that file. And what that means is that file is stored in the cloud, and I have the option to share it as a link as opposed to an attached static file. And so what does that mean? I'm sharing a link to that document that's stored on my OneDrive, and I can share it with different permissions, and I'll show you that here in a second. But it's only going to allow me to do this collaboration thing if, in fact, that document's stored in OneDrive. And so I'm going to pick that document, and I have two choices here. I can share it at a link, and as it says, recipients can see the latest changes and respond in real time. So even if you're not collaborating, if you're sharing a document, like I do this all the time, I'm guilty of it. I'll send out a document and then I'll think of something I want to add to it last minute. Well, the good news is if I share it as a link, I can quickly go in, edit that document, and as people click on it, they're going to see the latest version, which is kind of cool. Especially if you've got a document that you're getting feedback on and you want to keep adding content to. The other option I have is I can attach it as a copy, which is that old school way of I'm taking the current version, I'm attaching it as a file, and then sending it off, and now I have no more control of that file, and I really can't collaborate on it through this specific tool. So I'm going to go ahead and share this as a link. And you'll notice the document comes up, and by default, it says anyone can view. But I want Michael and I to collaborate on it. So I'm going to go down here and change the permissions. And I'm going to say the recipients can edit. So let's just walk through your choices here. Again, I'm going to step through that carefully. I'm going to click that down arrow. I'm going to go to change permissions. And I have anyone can edit it, which I don't know that I would do unless, often unless I was sending something out to the whole company that I wanted to contribute. Anyone can view. I might do that if I'm sending a document out to anyone in the company. Only my organization can edit and view. And then recipients can edit and view. So the recipients, what it will do is read who I sent this to and who I copied and only give them this permission. So that's what I'm going to do in this case. And I want to give them edit capabilities. So I want to give Michael edit capabilities. And so you'll see the text underneath there says recipients can edit. So now I'm going to go ahead and send that document. And so I've sent this document that we were editing before, and Michael has that document. And I want you to pay close attention to what happens when Michael opens this. And we'll give him a second to do so.
I'm opening it right now. I've got it in my inbox.
Okay.
All right.
Well, one of the things you'll notice right away is this. You see a little red flag here, and that's actually an indication that somebody else is in this document and editing that document. It might be because my screen's not, oh, here it is. Michael, you also see, is now connected to the document. I see his initials, and if, and he's on page 1. And so he's going to go ahead and add something to this list. And you'll see, I can see that he's adding it. As he's adding it, and then he can hit return. So he put in a number 3. And now I can jump in there, and if I want to put something in, to say, okay, what about, let's go through. Actually, Michael, it looks like you got it locked. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I hopped off that line. See if you can hop up now.
It's not letting me type for some reason. I'm sorry. There we go. So now I can edit content in that document, and we can collaborate on it. We can see each other's changes, and it's kind of a live way to do it. And so that's an example of how it works in Word. So we're going to jump over to Excel now, and if I save those changes, those are being saved. And before I leave this, I want to show you one other sort of trick with Office 365. This isn't really specific to SharePoint, but Office 365 allows you to keep versions. So this one's only going to have one version because we've been editing it, but I can go to this area called File and then go to Version History. And if this document has been saved a number of times, I can switch back and forth to the older versions and then restore them if I want, or I can compare them and see the difference of the documents. And so it's kind of a nice feature that's built into Excel, it's built into Word, that allows you to do that irrespective of OneDrive, but I thought I'd mention it because it can come in handy when you're doing this collaboration stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and close this document. And now I'm going to go ahead and open an Excel file. And
hey,
just
Scott, can I ask
giggles,
a question about the Word versioning?
Yeah, go ahead.
So does it, when you save it as a different version, does it edit the name so you know which version you're on? How does it do that?
No, it's, so the way Office actually stores every version of that file. So let me open a file real quick that, so like here's one that we've been working on, which is, you know, all of our thoughts around how we might go with a more long-term solution for remote people. And if I go in, this should have numerous versions. Yeah. So I can see I last edited this multiple times today, and then I can go back in time and see versions. And if I click open version, it's actually going to open up a second copy of that document. And now I can compare it, or if I want to restore to that version, I can. And now the previous version just moves down in the list. So you don't have to worry about the names of the file. These versions are out there stored in that same document. Does that make sense?
Okay, so that
Brian?
being said, no, it does. But so if I were to, let's say Scott sends me a document that he wants my feedback on, make some comments on it, and I do save it as, you know, version 2 with BV edits or something, that is going to be a different document then that will have a different versioning string, right?
Correct. And
okay,
I always struggle with that, Brian, because what you did is exactly what I always do. But one could make a case, don't do that anymore. Use the capabilities. The other thing that some of you may be familiar with is the older system, and which is to use the review tracking changes. And you can track changes with the document if you want. And then as I make changes to the document, it's going to record those. And if I view, and I apologize because the screen's kind of small. How do I see? Oh, here it is. I will see that markup. And then if I send that document to Scott, he can accept those changes. So that's another feature that's been around a while. I kind of think the newer one might make more sense, because what I find when you do that track changes, the documents get really cluttered and kind of hard to follow.
Right. Okay, thank you, Scott.
Yep. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're just going to do a list of IT associates. And, you know, we got Scott Walker, and we got Dennis Norton, and we got Michael Catanzaro. We got Ralph Smith. We got James Cummins. And then I'm like, you know, please, I know everybody in my department, don't harass me too much, but I'm going to say, hey, Michael, I want you to give me some help with this. And so I'm going to go ahead and share this document. Let me make this bigger. And I'm going to use the share feature, which also exists in Office. And I'm going to store that on my SharePoint because I haven't saved it. So list of IT associates, and hit OK. And now it's going to give me some options. Now, I still could have done this the way I did it in Outlook before. I'm just showing you a different way or another way to do it. And so, again, I get choices here. I can say anyone with the link can view it. Or I can say people in TopRX with the link can view it. Or people with existing access, or I can specify people. So in this case, I'm going to specify people. And I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, I want those people to allow editing. The other thing that's kind of a cool feature here is I can block people from downloading it. So if I want to send out a document and I want them to be able to view it in Outlook, but I don't want them to be able to download it and save it to their hard drive or do that kind of stuff, I can prevent that. But in this case, I'm choosing specific people and allow editing. And I'm not setting those people right now. I'm going to set those up here when I type this in. So I'm going to find Michael, click on him, and I could add other people to it. We'll just throw Ralph in there. And now I have some options. I can add a message to it. Hey, can you check to make sure I didn't miss anyone? And I can hit send here and an email is going to go out, or I can copy the link and I can cut and paste it, or I can actually launch Outlook if I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit send. And so now that's set, and Michael's going to receive that. And we'll see kind of a similar concept that we saw in the Word, where we'll see him connect. But Excel's kind of even cooler in that it shows what cell he's in, and we can do more interaction in an Excel environment. So I just thought you guys might want to see that, because I know a lot of you work in Excel too. So you notice it popped up. If you can ignore my other pops up, it did pop up and got hidden, but it showed me Michael Catanzaro is here, and I see him in this cell right now. That's where he's at in the document. So Michael's going to go ahead and add somebody I forgot. We'll challenge, see how well he. And you'll see he added Cindy Howard and Dana Cole. And so Adam Joyner and those people are now in that list. And I can actually see him doing that, and we can talk and interact with that. And so Michael's done doing that for now. That's good. And I'm going to go in there and say, oh, well, wait a minute. I want to replace me with Lee Parkinson. And so now I've done that, and now Michael's seeing that same thing on his screen. So we're collaborating in the document. You can see I'm in the green cell and he's in the blue cell. So it's just kind of a cool feature that allows you to interact on spreadsheets. And again, when we're all done, we save this and it's saved in the cloud. The other thing that's cool, and this is the last thing I'll cover, and I'll open it up for questions, but those documents are in the cloud now, and I don't have to save them. So like if I'm working on a cloud-based document, the minute I open it, you'll see autosave is on. And as I make changes, it's saving. Well, why is that important? Well, I know Brian, for example, I'll pick on him. He has 7,348 spreadsheets open on his computer right now. And if they're not in the cloud and his computer goes kaput, he may have lost some of that data. Well, because of the versioning and because of the autosave, this is a safer way to do it. So now that stuff has changed, and now he doesn't have to worry about those documents getting whacked or his computer having to reboot to install 6 years worth of patches or whatever he's denied for the last 6 months. So those are the types of things that make this better, because now the content is always saved. There's less risk of losing it. Another cool feature is if you get a new computer, for example, when you open up that new computer, you're going to go ahead and all of those, Brian sent me a note saying that's unfair. All of those documents are going to automatically be available to you, and the shortcuts that you see under Excel, when you click on Excel or right click on Excel and I see all the latest documents, all that stuff's going to follow you from computer to computer. Your desktop setup's going to follow you from computer to computer. And so if you make the leap to OneDrive, a whole mess of other things that you may not think of right now are going to be of benefit. Scott asked a question, which is, are documents saved on the OneDrive only, or are they only saved to the cloud, or do they get on your computer? The short answer is they're cached on your computer as well as OneDrive always. And that does require you to set it up the right first time. So when the IT team sends out the instructions, make sure you follow them real carefully, because there's some subtle things in there that force your what we call synchronization between your computer and the cloud.
Well, Scott, let me ask you a question. So if we've already have it set up, the implication is that it wasn't set up correctly and we need to redo it?
Probably not. What I'll show you, probably the one feature you need to do, okay, so this blue icon is what's called OneDrive for Business. There's another product called OneDrive Personal, and why is that kind of important? And I hesitate to say this because this gets a little confusing, but like on my real computer, I'm using my personal laptop right now just because I've given Lee my company laptop and just trying to make it through my last 2 weeks with it. But I have a OneDrive for Business, which is my TopperX OneDrive, and then I have OneDrive Personal, which is my personal one, and it allows me to keep those two worlds separate. But you'll see some instructions for OneDrive Business and OneDrive Personal. But if I click on this, right-click on it, excuse me, and I go into Settings, Greg, this is one you'll probably want to check, and go into Backup, and then Manage Backup, and you're going to, I already have these synced, but you're going to want to make sure these three things are synced. So when you go into it, if they're not, it'll say, hey, you got to checkbox these. Do you want to start syncing them? And that's what makes that caching copy on your local hard drive as well as the cloud.
Well, let me ask one more question just to make sure that I understand. So when we tried to set this up earlier with others, and I sent them a link, they were attaching to my Greg Ritter's TopRX OneDrive. Is that how it will work?
Yeah, so if you send a file like that one I sent to Michael, that's going to be stored on my OneDrive, and I've given him permission to that file that he will have if he uses that link. So he'll sustain that permission until I take it away. If I wanted to take it away, and it's a great question, I have not done this, so bear with me. So if I wanted to, this was a document that I shared, I can go and click stop sharing, and now I can turn off sharing, or I can go in and change the sharing permissions, and now that document is strictly for me to edit. So does that answer your question, Greg? And I know when we did it before, it was the older version of this, and so it had some, there were some holes.
Well, my question, I guess my main question with regards to OneDrive is still the same. Can I use it like a shared drive, like a real shared drive with people that can have access, or do I have to put it under, because the way I understand the way OneDrive is configured, it always has to have an owner, and that owner can't be TopRX. It has to be me or somebody that might leave the company rather than the finance department. Yeah, the short answer is we can create group areas. You actually use that in Teams and or SharePoint, and they use OneDrive behind the scenes, but they create what's called groups. And those groups, you can do all sorts of stuff. So if you're getting into, and that's a good question, because it's something that everybody on the call should understand. If you truly are going to create like a department drive, OneDrive area that you want to collaborate and store and have TopRX sort of quote control it, you're going to want to get with someone from IT and have them help you at least initially set up a team group, and then create a file repository there. You can create a blog. One of the things I'll show you real quick, I'm going to stop sharing this, and hopefully there's nothing in here. Oh. So here's an example. Let me share it. So this is Teams, and our team uses the heck out of this. We're communicating with each other all day long in here. So I'm just going to send a message to Dennis and let him reply. And if I want to call Dennis out, I put that little @ symbol in there. Hey, Dennis, can you reply to this? And knowing Dennis, he'll see that and he can reply to it. And you'll see Dennis and Josh are typing something right now. Teams gives you a whole mess of tools that you can do. And you'll see here, I'm going to point to the left. You saw where Dennis said he got it. I can do cute things. And some people think this is cute, but it's actually kind of useful. I can say, okay, cool. I'm going to give you a thumbs up so you know that I read that and I'm good. But Teams allows you to do chat. You can create these team areas, which are pretty cool. You can create a team calendar, which is kind of cool. You can actually make calls, which I don't recommend because we use Ring Central. But you can also create a file repository, much like we did here. So that's kind of going into the advanced class, which is not what this was intended, but that gives you just some visibility as to what's possible. So good questions. Any other questions?
I have one, Scott. If you send it, if you forward someone to be able to be a recipient of a document, and then they forward it to somebody, do they inherit that, or does it stop with just the first one?
I don't believe it passes that permission. If they were in that original recipient, they would have it. But if they're an additional recipient, I don't think it does that. I would have to test that, to be honest.
All right.
William just raised his hand. Oh, he's dangerous with this Ring Central meetings. What do you need, William?
I also sent you a chat. Hey, I was just checking. So I've had some trouble sharing a document like you just did, but deciding should I share it that way, or is it more appropriate if that document were for many users? I'm really having trouble deciding if I should do the link through OneDrive or if I should use SharePoint for that purpose.
Yeah, and it's a good question, and that's something that we'll have to play around with. And it was kind of one of the hesitance of doing this presentation without sort of having a formal project and doing a bunch of testing. The short answer is I think you need to make sure that the recipients got their OneDrive set up right. Otherwise, I think things don't exactly work right. The other thing is SharePoint, our version of SharePoint uses OneDrive, but it's not really quite completely right because however that was originally set up is not playing real well. So if you have a document that you put in SharePoint and now you want to share it, it'll look like it's in OneDrive, but I've seen some weird behavior with that. So you got to be careful there. So to me, what I wanted to cover today is just sort of what's possible. And then what I would suggest is go play with it and try it between, people, kind of like what Greg did last time, and then open up a ticket and get some help. You can also Google, there's tons of YouTube videos and Microsoft content out there, and we'll get some documentation out. We just wanted to get this out there so people understood what's possible, and then we could start working on, getting people configured and help them with any challenges they have. And the only thing I would ask is be mindful of our current situation, and feel free to play around with it. But if you run into a dead end and you need to wait a day or two for somebody to get back to you, just be respectful of that is all I ask.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Hopefully that was a little bit helpful, at least gave you some idea of what's possible. And, Lee and Dennis and the team, we'll be able to help you guys get this going. But I really think TopperX could benefit if we can get to OneDrive for many reasons that I tried to touch on today. So
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.